Hello. Hi, Christy. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So excited to be doing this.
Yeah. Well, so we are here for my December Doing It series, where I am celebrating corporate badasses who are doing the work to get themselves into higher level leadership positions so that they can really change their organizations from the C suite out. And today I've brought on Christy Sarno, and I'll have her introduce herself in a minute. But I just want to say, that I've known Christy for about a year and a half, and I've just really admired the way that she not only approaches the work in coaching, but how she just really shows up so powerfully as a leader and really owns her own ability to get herself to take control of her own career and also to take control of her own destiny and her leadership. So that is something that I really admire about her and all of the corporate badasses who I'm having on this December series. If you're watching us live, please go ahead and ask questions. I'll see the questions and I'll put them in front of Christy. And also just say hello because we'd love to hear from you. And if you're not watching live and you're watching the replay, you can also let us know that you're here and that you saw it and what stood out for you. And we'll make sure to answer any questions that you have, even if you're watching the replay. So welcome again, Christy. Why don't you take a second to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, it's been quite a pleasure working with you over this past year, and definitely transformational word that a lot of people use when they're talking about you, but certainly has been for my career. So I'm Christy Sarno. I am the Senior Director of Business Development and Corporate Strategy at Homology Medicines. And I began at Homology almost a year ago, just in January of this past year. Was working with Stacey before that through my transition from my previous company and into this one. So a lot of good tips on how to exit and enter appropriately, which has been great. And I'm really excited to be talking to everyone today.
Awesome. Well, the first question that I'd love to hear from you is, can you describe your leadership style? How do you define yourself as a leader?
Oh, I think I have been described this way in the past, and I kind of like it, and I want to stick with it as my style as being friendly. I'm definitely not a bull in the china shop kind of negotiator, so to speak, and I think that flows through in my leadership style as well. Working with different kinds of teams over the years. I've done some consulting. I did a lot of work with an organization called Women in Bio, all different kinds of groups of people. And I think that's really given me a lot of fodder for trying to understand personality types and how other people operate that may be different from yourself, and just learning how to talk to people in a way that they can actually respond to you. That's been a huge growth for me over the past couple of years. It's something I've been focusing on. And so I hope that my leadership style is sort of approachable, someone that you can always come to ask a question, and just more of a fact-based approach to solving problems that doesn't get too emotional.
Now, I assume that your leadership style has transformed over the years as you've grown in your career. And earlier on, I think for a lot of women in particular, the idea of having a leadership style as friendly is like, nope, not working for me, right? Because it also equates like getting walked all over, getting dismissed, getting pushed aside. But I totally hear you. I hear exactly what you're saying. So what does friendly look like now for you versus maybe what it looked like at the beginning of your career?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think friendly, you can be seen as the friend that isn't taken seriously, right? So you need to be friendly but professional. And so I think that's what I mean when I say fact-based. So if someone comes to you with a problem, they know they can approach you and they know they can explain their viewpoint to you and that you'll be open to that. But it doesn't mean that you're just going to do whatever they want or confirm whatever they want. A lot of times when people come to you, they just want you to confirm, oh, yeah, that's so horrible. And I may say something like, well, actually, let's look at it from this viewpoint. Maybe it could be a good thing. But I think the friendly piece is that maybe a better word is approachable. I feel like approachable is a little bit overused. But, you want to come at something with the ability to look at different viewpoints in order to solve a problem. And that could be a personal problem or a work problem. And how you approach that, is keeping your eyes open to looking at it from different angles is something we've been working on, something I've been working on, and something I feel a lot of support in the homology management team to do. So I think it's really important.
Do you find that in your work in business development in particular, that this sort of approachable and being able to see things from a different point of view, do you find that that leadership style works pretty well in the type of work that you do as well?
Yeah, I actually think it's essential because there are lots of things that happen when someone calls you on the side where you can gain a lot of information about how someone's thinking about a project that you're working on, and clues about their mood and their approach, and how is the next conversation going to go. And if someone doesn't feel like you're going to be open to what they're going to say, they're not going to call you. They're not going to bring you into the loop, so to speak, on their side of the story. And that can be hugely valuable when you're moving through conversations with another party.
Oh my goodness. And also internally, right? Because you want to be looped into the conversations at your organization as well. And so this sort of shows, hey, I bring value to the table, but also I'm approachable and I'm not going to throw you under the bus or start to show, like the wrong side of whatever it is that you're trying to present.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much.
You also don't want to overreact to any information that you receive. That's another thing that's probably an acquired skill.
Sure. Well, speaking of acquired skill, I think another thing that I have heard you say that people talk to you or refer to you as is the sort of networking expert or guru or master or whatever you want to call it. And so can you speak to that a little bit? How did you become so equipped at networking?
How did I get there? That is a good question. I mean, working with organizations like Women in Bio is definitely good practice. I think just learning how to listen to other people and actually listen. So starting a conversation with chit chat as far as how was your summer vacation, and actually hearing what they say, because there might be something interesting there that you remember. And then the next time you see them, you'll say, hey, I also went to Hawaii last year. Remember how you were talking about that? Those pieces of conversation can sometimes be really important, because if anyone's ever done that to you, you know how good it feels where you're like, oh, you remember that I went to Hawaii last year? That's awesome. It just makes you feel really good as a person. And then, you can evolve those conversations into what you might want to do for work with someone. And that's how I approach networking, is what can I learn from this person that just might be interesting other than what they do for work? There's always a good story.
That is so good. And that just helps build that trust, right? It solidifies that trust between the two of you, because it seems like if you're actually asking questions and you actually want to hear the answer to these questions, right, then people are going to trust you. They're going to want to bring you into the conversation, and you're going to seem very approachable. I love that.
Yeah. And you never know.
Awesome.
Somebody may say, oh, I'm really bummed right now, having a hard time at my job. I don't know what to do. And maybe that's where the conversation ends. And then maybe 4 months later, a recruiter calls you for something you're not interested in. You're like, hey, but this person might be looking.
Yeah.
And that's how you connect people, and connecting other people is something that I love doing. And people remember that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. They absolutely do. I remember that about you, right? So it's like I see you as that type of person. So speaking of networking and being able to make these connections, can you talk about some of the challenges that you faced over the last year in terms of the Great Resignation, or perhaps your organization, and how you've grown as a leader in order to be able to manage these relationships in this sort of crazy environment that we've been in over the last couple of years?
Yeah. And I think, as far as women are concerned, I mean, the Great Resignation refers to a lot of women leaving the workforce as well. And it does tend to fall on the women to add on that extra childcare and the remote homeschool learning that happened last year. Not all the time, but I think overwhelmingly it does. And what I've been trying to counterbalance there is these conversations that we have in coaching about being in the weeds and what is really important to you. And that could be from a holistic view of, I've had conversations with other colleagues where they're saying, oh, I used to feel so ambitious and I just don't anymore. And, I feel like I should be working on my resume or I should be going for promotion, but I'm just not. And some of those conversations end up being like, it's okay to focus on your kids this year. You're not abandoning your career if you make the conscious decision to focus on your kids this year and go back to it next year. So that's one way. But I've also had conversations with folks that are saying, I'm so overwhelmed at work right now and with the kids and whatever else they have at home or parents to take care of, any other things. There's no way I could get promoted. I don't even know if I want that promotion, because if I'm this busy now, it's only going to be double if I get promoted. Whereas what we really need to work on is what's important. What are you doing in your current job that moves the needle? If you just focus on that and eliminate some of that other stuff, the forest view will become clearer. And then maybe you could see that if you were promoted, then you would actually have more of an impact from that level. And so working your way out of the weeds, it's a great chance to practice this during this pandemic and all the extra responsibilities, really a chance to focus on what moves the needle for me, for my career, for my family. What are those things? And then those are always at the
for
top.
the company and everything, right? It's like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
This sort of reminds me of the second part of your title, which is corporate strategy, right? And I feel like that has to come really strongly into play as you've added this additional responsibility to your job title and being able to really focus on what's most important. And so we kind of do that for ourselves first, and then we're able to translate that into the organization. Can you speak to how adding corporate strategy to your wheelhouse has really helped you elevate your leadership?
Yeah, that piece is super important to me, and it's been amazing. So as you said, like just from what moves the needle for the company, corporate strategy is the ultimate, what is that forest viewpoint? And I just love it. And specifically at Homology, I'll say that the openness to ideas is amazing. I mean, you can throw out anything and people might disagree and say, no, we're not going to do that. But they're like, hey, good thought, and I love that atmosphere here. And, getting to sort of think about how to differentiate your company, or where do we think the state of the industry is going to be in 5 years, and how do we get ready for that? And what do we need to add now to be ready for that? Or where do we want to be in 5 years? And how would we actually get there? Let's count back. What do we need to do today? I love those kinds of conversations. And I think, that's from a corporate perspective, every company is doing that on some level. But, that's one of those things that this whole thing of thinking as part of your daily job.
I love it. Yes.
We talked about this in coaching, making time to actually do that and to step back for a second and think about what could be good for the company has been so much fun.
Yeah. And it really goes full circle. You were talking a little bit, alluding to managing your emotions and really being able to show up as that powerful leader, right? Spending that time thinking, right? All of this stuff helps you figure out where you're too far into the weeds, what you can let go of, because it is more enjoyable to be involved in those types of conversation, those higher level conversations, because as we're juggling so many things right now, I want the hours that I'm spending at work to be actually kind of like this LinkedIn Live right now, right? If I can be having and engaging in these types of conversations all day, I'm like, this is amazing, right? And it's the type of work that I want to do as well. So,
and it's true for everybody. When you're envisioning, so to speak, you could pull anyone from the company and start saying, hey, what do you think about that? And everyone's into that.
I feel like another part of your leadership style is this partnership, right? So I guess you kind of alluded to collaboration and being approachable, but really you're so magnetic with peers and the executives at your organization. It doesn't matter if you're at their level or like literally at their level, you are always engaging in this types of partnership conversations. And I think that's been really key to getting you included in those conversations, to get pulled into the room and everything like that.
Yeah. I mean, engaging with other groups is only helpful. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gathering more ideas. Maybe you have
Mm-hmm.
ideas, but other people do too. And then sometimes they're synergistic, and then you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden, you came together with this great new idea. And yeah, I love doing that. And I think that one thing I've learned from you too, and I feel like I was doing it before, but not as much, is just to from a day-to-day perspective, so back to this forest tree analogy, not worrying about the promotion or my level or my title or any of that stuff, and just sort of engaging with people the way that I feel that I should on a professional level. And
Mm-hmm.
of course I'm going to step back and think how to manage my career. That's some of the work we do, but I think on a day-to-day, I just want to behave in the manner that I think I should for the level that I think I am, and just carry on that way and
Uh-huh.
worry about the title when it's appropriate, which
Mm-hmm.
is not on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis for sure.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, because I think for so many women, what we do is we just like don't worry about the title, right? And so then what happens is like years go by, right? And we're just doing the day to day and we haven't even thought about it. But you're right. Like I only focus on the actual promotion conversations like maybe once a quarter, could be every 6 months, right? But the fact that you're thinking about it at all is huge. And then you're showing up as that executive every single day and engaging in conversations. And when you do that magic balance, that's when the opportunities, that's when you get tapped. That's when somebody says, oh, yes, it's time. And
I think it
so,
is hard
yeah,
because if you're constantly thinking about it, and if you're unhappy,
yeah,
then you think
then
about
you
it
might want
more.
to. Yeah, exactly.
But when you are constantly thinking about it, you end up saying things like, well, that's above my pay grade, or, you
Oh,
hear these
yeah.
things, and it just doesn't come across well ever. And so
Mm-hmm.
but it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to, you want to keep that to a minimum, right? You don't want to be, well, that's not part of my job. And if I
Well,
was
and we do
promoted,
it
I would do that,
internally,
but not now,
everyone.
right?
Yeah, like, yeah, we can see right through this, right? Even if you're just saying it in your head and you're not actually, obviously not saying it out loud, right? It's
Right.
it's part of what's going on. I love that. So
Yeah.
you talked about doing more thinking these days and spending and carving out that time to really think. Would you be willing to share any strategies? I know as we're moving into the New Year's resolutions and people are trying to add more strategic thinking time to their calendar, I think that could be useful.
Yeah, that's a good one because it's easier said than done for sure. And I had a good run going in the summer, and then got busy and have fallen off. But I think it has to be what works for you. I was having a conversation with someone about, they were talking about all the podcasts they listen to. And I was saying, when do you have time to listen to podcasts? Like, how do you fit that into your schedule? And so I think and they are saying, well, when I walk the dog. For me, when I walk the dog, I like to have nothing coming at me. That's a no media zone. And so for me, I've been, if I don't actually put it on my calendar, which I do have a practice of doing that sometimes gets bumped. But if I don't, I've been using that time to just shut everything off. I'm walking the dog and I just let my mind wander. And that's kind of what you need, especially if you've just had an intense phone call, or you've got one coming up. Get out there, go for a little walk, make yourself a snack, whatever it is, and turn off the media. I feel like there has to be a piece of everyone's day where you have no media coming at you. Otherwise, it's just, how can you sort out the noise? In my opinion, some people think better with noise coming at them, but I don't. So that would be my advice, is just carve out
Yeah, I love it.
something, when you're cooking, or anything where you don't have to be in front of a computer or have headphones in, or where you have time to just disconnect for a minute.
Yeah. Again, it's just making that commitment to it, right? And saying, okay, this is something that I'm going to give myself space to do, and figure out how it unfolds every day or week or whatever that might be. I love that.
It is interesting, as I've done this, as I've scheduled this in, what does come through when you give yourself that time. It has been amazing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I find it to be really incredible. It's kind of like why I have the best ideas in the morning. It's like, well, what did I do? I gave myself space for 8 hours, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, and so we can intentionally do that, I think. Yeah, and that's one of my goals going into the new year too, is to how can I carve out that space for more higher level thought leadership, like really strategic thinking, what really matters, understanding what's going to move the needle, everything we've been talking about today.
And I think one
Yeah.
strategy that you and I had talked about that is really good is if you're not used to it, or you're not good at just being like, what is my brain going to do today? You can write down something you need to work on or a problem. So it could be like, okay, what do I think is moving the needle for me or my company or right now?
Yeah.
Write yourself a question and then let your mind wander on the answers to that question. Or
Mm.
I'm having a problem at work, whether it's interpersonal, whatever. I have a problem I can't solve. How should I solve it?
Mhm.
What could I do? What's the outcome I want? And then you
Mhm.
write down those questions and then give yourself that 20 minutes to think, what is the outcome I want? If I'm going to go have this conversation, what exactly do I hope happens at the end of it? How am I going to, manage this? And then use that time for something like that, something specific. And then I feel like when you start that way, it's easier to just jump in.
I just thought of something in the fact that our brains are naturally wired to overthink and to spin out. And this is like what we normally just do all day long is just think too
Yeah.
much about stuff. And so this is like adding a container around it, adding some intentionality, which is really going to help you actually solve the problems or come up with a bigger solution that could really move the needle, as you said, on the problem. So I love that so much. That's really great. So can you tell us, why do you feel inspired to have a voice at the table? What inspires you?
Well, that's an interesting one that I've been thinking, knowing this is coming up. But I feel like with the experiences that I've had in my career, so I haven't had a traditional career path where I've, moved up the ladder at one company, or I've gone from this job to that job to that job, and now I'm here. I've bounced around a little bit for various reasons. But I actually think that the fact that I've done that has given me a lot of interesting experiences and interactions with other companies that a lot of people haven't experienced if they've gone the more traditional route into their current role. And so there's a lot of conversations where I feel like I can say, oh, well, during this experience, we did it this way. Why don't we try that? Or I learned that this probably won't work because of this. And I feel like, I have that to contribute. I've noticed here, again, my management team is so open. There's been some topics where, the past several years or in their past role, certain things they just didn't consider for good reasons, various reasons. And then I would come back and say, well, I think the situation might be different now. Do you think we should reconsider for these reasons? And then they're like, oh, well, actually, maybe, yeah. And so I think where I am right now, which is sort of sitting right under the management team level, it's been interesting to see how can I contribute to a group of people that are so busy that may not have time to sit back and think strategically, and can I put this in front of them in a way that they're like, oh yeah, maybe we should think about that. And that's been amazing. And that sort of thing is where I think, I could do more. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
you
looking
add
forward
that
to.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can totally see that. And so that's inspiring because it's like, okay, I can add the perspective and I'm a step down from the management team, right? But they're still willing and open to listen to me and to entertain my ideas, even if they don't say yes to everything, right? But there's just this very inclusive environment. And so I could see it's like, more of that, please.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
that would be great, right? When we look at the rest of our career and what we're doing, is like really making that impact, being able to have our voice heard.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
And I think it would be enhanced by, continuing to gather viewpoints and perspectives that I haven't been privy to yet. So that's
Mhm.
sort of what I'm looking forward to is how does my thinking change as I step into new roles or move around, and what do I learn from those people? Just like we talked about at the beginning from networking, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's so good, right? You're like actively putting together the pieces of your career. It's not like this formula that you figured out when you were 20 years old and you've just been fulfilling it. It's like, no, it's like,
Yeah, I
it's that
definitely
level
did
of
not do
curiosity.
that.
Yeah, me either. Me either. Oh, that's awesome. Well, do you have anything else that you would like to share with us today?
um, I think I would like to share that one of the biggest things I've learned over the last year and has given me so much confidence that I wouldn't have even expected is thinking about how to get out of my own head. A lot of times we're doing this to ourselves where we're overanalyzing things we said, always taking responsibility for things that happen in the workplace that maybe you have no control over, but then thinking about what you do have control over, your reactions to things, how you participate in a meeting, how you collect and process information, has really changed for me over the year, as in not everything is super important that I need to get worried about. Some things are just facts and I can process them later. Things like that, that I've learned over the year working with you, Stacey. And it's just amazing how much taking all of that out of my head has allowed me to focus so much more on what is important. It's unbelievable. So I would encourage everyone to think about, I don't know how to give that in a 1 or 2 sentence piece of advice, because it's certainly been a process, but that's something that's been really important to me, my growth.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That seems to be the theme of our conversation today, is really figuring out what is most important, that 20% that's really going to make that bigger impact. And it's like, it's anywhere from maybe the most important thing is to spend the time with my family right now, all the way up to maybe the most important thing is to reach out to my CEO and have a conversation about some idea that I have, right? And so engage in these ways. And I think that's really key. So I appreciate that a lot. And when you come off very approachable like you do, then it all works out in the end. That's amazing. Well, Kristi, thank you so much. Thanks so much for being here. I know that everyone who's listening or is going to listen to the replay really appreciates your leadership wisdom and what you've shared with us today. You are a total corporate badass. Everybody knows it. And I'm so thankful to celebrate you in this way.
Thanks, Stacey.